City hopping in our Airstream was not playing out well, but our RV park in Seattle was starting to make us change our tune.
You're listening to Travel FOMO, a podcast for people self-diagnosed with wanderlust.
Welcome to the Travel FOMO podcast. We are moving through season 9 and it is all about RV life. Or shall we say it's all about adapting to RV life, which we did, but it took a hot minute. I'm Hillary Houghton, and I'm here with the guy who hauled our Airstream across. I think we decided it was nearly 40,000 miles across the U.S. and Canada. Jamin.
Yes. Yeah, well, we set up the least expeditious route across. We drove across the country several times, but 40,000 miles.
40,000 miles. Congrats on that. Today we are taking you to Seattle, where things are trendy. There are seaside vibes, port vibes, shopping and markets and all kinds of stuff. I'll set the scene for you a little bit. We were just crossing the border. If you heard in our last episode, we had just been to Banff and Jasper National Parks. Then we'd made our way over to Vancouver, and now we were coming back into the U.S. from Canada. We were actually a little surprised by that because I just did not foresee that the border crossing would take as long as the drive itself from Vancouver. So we doubled up our travel time pretty much by just waiting to cross the border.
Yeah, it took forever.
But it wasn't that bad. They searched the back of the truck bed and they didn't even look inside the Airstream at all again, which just really surprised me. It did feel a little stricter than coming into Canada. Coming back into the U.S. felt a little bit more strict, but since we were Americans, I wasn't as worried. But yeah, what do you think about the border crossing? Was that any takeaways from your perspective?
I'm kind of surprised that it did take as long as it took, but when you consider that we were coming from Vancouver into Seattle rather than the middle of Montana,
yeah.
I think that probably played a big factor into why it took longer. And
it was a little later in the day too, I think.
It was, yeah. Yeah, when we had gone into Canada, we had gotten up pretty early and gotten there early. So
yeah,
it was definitely quicker. But, it's pretty easy. You just comply. And I think it's more annoying than anything when that I don't have anything I'm not supposed to have. Everything's by the book. So just look at my stuff and let me go.
Yeah. Well, see, but I get nervous, Nelly, because I'm did I understand the rules correctly? What if I didn't understand the rules correctly and somebody comes down on me really hard? Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Do I have an apple in the truck bed?
Yeah. If you're ever with Hillary in any of these situations, you definitely look over at times and be like, will you chill out? We really are going to get searched if you don't just chill out a little bit. You act like we've got a kilo hidden in the seat somewhere.
Oh my gosh,
the worst thing that we have is a butter knife. Just chill for a second.
Oh my gosh, that is so true. That's so true. Oh man.
If you've ever watched one of those Locked Up Abroad shows and people are put in situations where they're asked to smuggle drugs across the border, Hillary wouldn't make it through the cab driver would be I can't in good conscience take you to the airport. You're clearly going straight to jail with whatever it is that you have.
And I have clearly watched every episode of Locked Up Abroad. Oh, too funny. But we made it safe and sound. All good. All good. We ended up in Seattle, and the ironic part is in the last episode, we really didn't care for our RV park. We were packed in there like sardines. It was not a good situation. And then we're oh, great. Now we're going to another city. But we got to this RV park, Lake Pleasant RV Park outside of Seattle, and we were this is incredible. I would live here.
It was a really great RV park. Really, really nice. Like you said, such a contrast to what we had been in Vancouver. The people there were super, super nice. I mean, it was one of the nicest RV parks that we stayed
Yeah, for
in my
sure.
mind. It basically, there was a big lake, and all of the spots were kind of around this lake. There were a few rows of spots that didn't have like direct water access, but most of them did. And the thing I really appreciated about this park were it was nice, level concrete pads
Yeah.
to park on, which is really nice. A lot of space. Like they could have crammed a bunch more spaces into the room that they had. And they also planted rows of evergreen trees between all the spots. So
Yeah.
if you remember, like you're parked and we had neighbors on either side of us, but you couldn't see them.
Mm-hmm.
You could barely hear them
Because you had all these
because,
shrubs next to you, making it
yeah,
super private and super lush and green.
right. And so even though like it's an RV park and there's a bunch of people there, it still felt more secluded and more out. Like we backed right up to the lake. I don't like to eat on the tables at RV parks because I feel like there's just people around like watching you eat. And I feel like that's really weird. And so I don't like to do it. But we ate every
Is that why we
meal.
never did it?
I don't like it. I don't like
I
being out.
did not
Like,
ever know that you didn't like it though. I remember
yeah,
always thinking like we never hang out outside. This is so ironic because that's the whole point.
it just feels strange to me. I like sitting out by the fire and I don't mind like people walking by and stuff like that. But I feel like during the day when you're eating like lunch or dinner and you're just like out, this, like you're like one of those raccoons that gets caught, like the light gets switched on and it's like, like I'm just eating, leave me alone.
Oh.
But I feel like we ate every meal outside at this particular one because it felt private and secluded and by yourself. Like it was really nice. Maggie and I went on a walk one of the mornings there and saw some deer and stuff like that. They had some trails that led us out. It was nice and quiet. Everyone there was in a good mood, it felt like.
Yeah. Everyone
And
was so kind. They were kind to Maggie.
yeah.
Yeah. It was actually really affordable to wash clothes there too. And I was like, oh my gosh, we just like spent hours using broken machines at this other place,
Yeah.
spending like $12 to do all of our laundry. And then we get here and we don't need to wash our clothes. And we see it's like this really, really nice place with Wi Fi and all these nice washing machines and dryers. And it's $1 a load.
Right.
I was like, are you kidding me? That's the cheapest we ever saw it the whole time. It's crazy.
Yeah. In fact, we liked it so much there that we were like, well, maybe we consider like living here in the RV once we're done traveling. And so we checked it out and there's like a 5-year wait list.
A 5-year wait list.
Right.
That's so crazy.
So you can get in like us. Like if you want to go, like you can book out in advance and book for, a few days or a week or something. But if you want to like be there long term, maybe one of their long term tenants, like a 5-year wait list.
That is so crazy to me.
Yeah.
Oh
But
my gosh.
it was so nice to be in a nice spot. And I felt like that day, even though we were kind of delayed, like it went a little bit smoother and we were able to kind of like get backed in and settled, and it was a nice spot. And it felt like for the first time in a while that we could just kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
let's take a minute. I remember that first night we went and bought like Qdoba or something and brought it back, and it was like the best food ever sitting by that lake, just eating
That's really nice.
fast food.
Yeah. And then like the ducks and geese would like swim around and then they'd come up and Maggie was like, what are you? What are you doing here?
Yeah,
It was just,
she was worried about
it was
the water
nice.
chickens.
We didn't even want to leave the RV park. Like, honestly, we liked it so much. We were like, do we even want to go see like the Space Needle and stuff?
Yeah.
We literally thought about like, maybe we just like take a pass on Seattle and we just hang out at this RV park.
I think too, that's when we started to realize like we're moving really fast through like parts of this trip. And like I don't know that we would have changed it because we still wanted to see all the places that we got to see.
Mm-hmm.
But that's definitely one of the spots that you're like, man, if we could have had a couple more days there to just hang out, it would have been really nice.
Yeah. And we did end up like getting up the next day, doing a lot of stuff. We started out with the Space Needle because you can't not do it.
Right.
Hello. I got the Space Needle, right? It's called the Space Needle.
I think so.
Okay. But, it's that big attraction that everyone kind of does when they go to Seattle, and we'd never been, so we did want to check it out. The wait times were, like, notable, just for the record, if you're interested in going. We probably waited an hour to get in, and that was after we'd already bought tickets and entered during our timed entry and all of that. So there's still like a waiting process, and a lot of kids and stuff like that. So if it's very kid friendly, but just something to think about if you've got your kids and you're waiting in line for an hour, that's kind of a big commitment. But it was just really, it was fun to see. Like, it was kind of fun to see the history behind it too, because they've like they just kind of showed like over the years like what happened whenever they were starting the process of building it and how it was so unique for its time, and it's still really unique. And the whole time we were in there, I just kept thinking like, this really is just like the Jetsons,
It does have that feel of the very like it's old but somehow super like futuristic.
Yeah.
And it's like modern but in a retro kind of way. And it definitely had that Jetsons feel to it.
Yeah. And they do try to make it really kid friendly. Like in the lobby, they had like a version of the needle that was made of Legos, and it was like, I think it was like 2 stories tall. Like, it was really tall, and you could see little Lego men and women standing up in the tower and stuff like that. It was pretty impressive. But and I loved how like they're really savvy about how they do it, because you can like scan your ticket and take a selfie with their cameras, and then you'll download your photo later and stuff like that. Or I guess I love the thought of it, because we did try it and it didn't actually work for us. But so good theory, good in theory. This really reminds me of the Stratosphere in Vegas.
Right. Yeah.
So, it's got like a rotating floor at the top, and so it's just a fun thing to do. It used to be a rotating restaurant when it first opened. And yeah, it was just fun to like look down at the city, and I love labyrinths, and I saw like a labyrinth down there, and then there's like this warehouse down there that had like this giant spider that was on the ceiling of it, which was like crazy. I guess it was like painted onto the ceiling of this warehouse or something. But like you could tell that they did it really intentionally, knowing that like people are up in that Space Needle every single day looking down and looking for interesting things, and that's like a really just interesting thing that they did to their warehouse, which I thought was really creative. But and then of course you can see like downtown and the port and the ocean and all that. So it was fun.
It is really cool too, because Seattle is such an interesting city to look out on from that perspective.
Yeah.
Because it's such a sprawling big city, and you see all of like the cityness to it, but then you also see, like you said, the port and the ocean and out, and you see mountains in the distance and stuff like that. So it's a really great place to have a lookout sort of building like that.
Yeah, for sure. Good point.
We were not going to leave any of the super Seattle hotspots unturned, so we promptly headed to Pike's Place Market right after the Space Needle.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, going into that day, we're like, okay, these are 2 really touristy things.
Yeah.
Like, are we sure that we want to do the really touristy things? And they both paid off. Like, I really enjoyed both of them. The Space Needle is kind of what you expect it to be. Pike Place Market is really, really interesting. You see the signs, and like, okay, they've got like the fish market there, and there's going to be some shops and stuff like that. But I was amazed at like how many layers and levels there are to that place. You walk up to it and you're hit with all these different smells, because You have the smell of the ocean, which is right there. You have the smell of like the fish and all of that stuff that they're selling in there. There's also a bunch of like flowers being sold and things like that. So you have like sort of all of that all happening at once. A lot of restaurants cooking a lot of interesting food, things like that. And then you kind of weave your way through this market, and there's layers to it. So there's
that really surprised me.
Yeah, I had no idea. I thought it would be like kind of one level, all here, sort of open air.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And that's what you got. But no, like you go back into it, it's a building where you can go up and down stairs. There's permanent shops of all kinds of things, from candy to like fine art
to antiques and bookstores.
Yeah, antiques, bookstores, like all that kind of stuff, like permanent location stores that are in this building. And then the outskirts of the building are all these booths of like people coming in for the day, selling like artistic things and pieces of art and flowers
jewelry
and spices and jewelry and clothes and t-shirts and like everything you can imagine.
Yeah.
So it's just like sensory overload top to bottom.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really, really, really interesting and not what I had expected.
Yeah. You could spend a lot of time there. And I could tell, like, if we lived in Seattle, we would probably go there a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I assume local people do. I don't actually know, but I would come and like frequently.
I remember kind of thinking that too. Like, there's a lot of stuff here that is like good, legitimate stuff. And especially if you are interested in supporting small businesses and things like that, that's what a lot of these booths are, is just people selling their things. And it was really, really, really great for that. We walked around until we got hungry for lunch. And we went to, I think it was the Alibi Room. And it's this little kind of bar / pizza place. And if you would like to go, all you have to do is go to the wall of gum, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's this huge wall where people have just like stuck their gum to it, and it's become a thing. And now there's gum up so high, I imagine people are having to come with ladders to place their gum up there.
Yeah, it's
truly
crazy.
Disgusting.
It's really crazy. I really wanted to participate, but I didn't have any Bubblicious with me. I was like, oh man, I love it.
See, it's one of those things that Hillary is like so excited about it all over, and I was just like, this is the grossest thing. I can like feel the germs like just like coursing through the air from all of this like
especially
nasty
after COVID.
Gum. Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I can't believe it's still a thing. Like, the people are still doing it, but you could tell it was still popular. I think the thing that gets me is it's so colorful. And I do love gum. So.
There you go. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. It's very colorful and you love gum. You're going to be all over the gum wall in Seattle.
It's very Instagrammable, too.
Yeah. So go by, take your picture of all the gross gum, and then go into the Alibi Room, order a beer, let your stomach return to you, and then like order a pizza. The pizza was great there. It was really good. And then
I don't remember the Alibi Room the same way. I remember being a little disappointed when we walked in and being like, like I wish we'd chosen somewhere else.
The ambiance wasn't amazing.
Yeah, like, it's kind of like a sticky,
it was definitely sort of a divey
table
bar.
kind of divey bar. Yeah, and I didn't see that coming. And I think if I had seen that coming, I would have been like, oh yeah, we're going to go to a dive bar for lunch. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, who would have seen a dive bar be behind the wall of gum, but...
I'm so picky. I'm okay with a wall of gum. But...
yeah. Let's take a bunch of pictures of gum. But like, oh, I don't know. This dive bar is quite up to my standards.
Well, the thing that surprised me, too, was all of the shopping. Like, legit shopping in the area. Oh, my goodness. Like, we saw a Danner store.
Mm-hmm.
Danner boots, I really, really like Danner boots, and I have a pair that I spent way more than I will ever tell anybody on, but I love them so much and use them through all of our hiking that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. I've worn them out, but I've kept them. But I seriously just want to buy another pair just like them that's brand new. There was a Pendleton store, and that Pendleton store was actually like opening for the first time. And I think at that point I hadn't ever been to a Pendleton store. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is cool. I was loving the Pendleton stuff at the time as well. Fjallraven store. I don't know how you say that, but they make those backpacks that everybody loves. And I'd never seen one of those stores before. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of products that like I love, but I've never actually seen individual stores. And so that was really fun to get to go into a lot of places like that. And they were small enough it felt like boutique stores, but with your
Yeah.
favorite brands having their own boutique, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really cool. A lot of great shopping. And we had gotten into downtown via a train system
Mm-hmm.
and moved around through downtown on the train, which I really liked too. Like that, I enjoy getting around that way. And so I think it helped me enjoy Seattle a little more because we weren't constantly trying to find a parking spot and figure out
Oh,
where we're going to
that's
park the
right.
truck and
Yeah.
worry about the truck and all this stuff. We had just gone to sort of the outskirts of town, parked, and then rode on the train.
That's right. Yeah.
So if you are looking to be around Seattle, just know like there is public transport that can kind of get you to the places you want to go.
Yeah. And if we'd had more time, we would have hit up some other places by train.
Mhm.
But it was going to be a little bit, more work than we were like
just
willing.
more time, really.
Yeah, it was really just the time. But there was Alki Beach, which my brother Lamar has recommended, and his wife. I should say actually, Lamar's wife Ashley, my sister-in-law, she was the one who told me about the gum wall. So you're welcome, world, and thank you, Ashley. But also they recommended Alki Beach, and we really did start to make our way there, but it just wasn't working out with all the public transportation we were dealing with. And then also Fremont Troll. It's a troll under a bridge. Somewhere in Seattle, and so look it up. But it's a really just interesting artistic thing as well. So just kind of fun little things to see that you won't find other places. So
Yes.
that's kind of what we were looking for, is stuff that you won't find everywhere else. So
I do feel like Seattle and everything that we did there was very unique to it, and I did really appreciate that.
yeah,
Of like when I look back on those memories of those times, like you show me a picture and it's not like, is that, I can't really tell. Like, you know, for sure, like, oh yeah, that's a Seattle thing.
yeah,
And I thought that was really cool. I liked that.
yeah. But it just wouldn't be a good RV story without some travel problems. So
Yeah.
we were still dealing with random travel problems, all of them unrelated.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. This time we had a flat.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I took the tire in and
this was on the truck, right? So not
Right.
the RV.
Yeah,
Okay.
not on the trailer, just on the truck. And so I took the truck in to get the tire fixed, and we hadn't had the truck for long. Like we had bought the truck basically right before we bought the RV, and then went to Europe and came back, and so hadn't really had the tires changed at all. And when we bought the truck, I knew it had custom tires on it, and I knew that there was a lock on those tires. And so I knew I needed to check the glove box and make sure the lock was in there. And I did that. And then I took the truck in, and they were like, hey, we need the lock for the tire. And I'm like, it's in the glove box. And they said, well, one of them is. And I said, what do you mean one of them? And apparently there were two locking lug nuts on each tire, and we only had the lock for one of them. And the tire store that I had taken the truck to did not have the right lock. So basically we had to, like, they could get it off, but they couldn't put it back on. fixed the tire, and I had to drive to a couple other places to finally get another lug nut to work and buy the lock to go with all the others. So it's just another like travel problem.
Yeah.
But
at least we were in a city. I was so relieved by that. And our V Park was right there next to like all these grocery stores and restaurants and the tire place, and all of that could just be done so quickly.
Yeah. A very minor problem in the grand scheme of things.
Well, in the grand scheme of all the problems we'd had, it was like...
It's like nothing. It's just another day.
Just another day. Yeah. I remember us both being like, hey, no big deal. Flat tire? Cool.
Yeah, great.
We'll take that. We know how to deal with flat tires.
That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. But next up, we are headed to Olympic National Park. And oh my goodness, that is a fun one and a really diverse park.
Yeah, I loved that park.
There's so many different things. There's like the ocean, and there's rainforest, and there's mountains, and oh my goodness, that was like really fun.
Yeah.
Looking forward to reliving that with everyone. And but that's also where the outdoors came in. We got mice.
Yep.
We got mice in the Airstream. They infested our Airstream in Olympic National Park, and we weren't the same for weeks.
Weeks?
Was it weeks? It feels like weeks.
A week.
Well, there you go. Might as well.
It's like
a week.
This is like 4 nights.
Well, yeah. But 4 nights of no sleep.
Yeah.
Is what that equals to me. Oh my goodness. And like running around trying to figure out like how are we going to keep our food safe, and how are we going to keep Maggie from freaking out in the middle of the night, and how are we going to keep mice off the bed, and I've been known, guys. My friend Jessica Flores will tell you this, and anybody else that knows me very well, I've been known to throw up when I see mice, because it happened in our dorms back in college, and couldn't hold it back. Made me a nervous wreck for so long that I eventually just spewed everywhere. Fortunately, I've grown up a little bit since then. So a little mice drama ahead. So, okay, but before we do that, don't forget to follow us. Well, first of all, you know what we haven't mentioned in a while? If you guys are listening on Apple Podcasts, would you mind just going and just putting a rating out there and like a little review, because it actually goes a long way. And I know it's really easy to do if you're on Apple. So I'm mentioning Apple Podcasts for that reason. But anywhere you can rate or review us would be really helpful, if it's a good rating.
Right.
If you've got some choice words, you can email us at travelfomopodcast@gmail.com. But you guys can also find us on social media. We are out there on YouTube. Definitely check out YouTube, because we've got some videos out there for you. And everything we talk about here, you get another side of it by seeing it. And actually you kind of get a whole different perspective, I feel like. Yeah,
it really is like 2 different sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Like it's not, we don't just regurgitate what's on the video, and the video doesn't necessarily, like, we don't script the video, so it doesn't have time to be anything other than like what we were experiencing in the moment, but much different than the podcast. Yeah.
The podcast might be a little bit more authentic because we share the ups and downs more clearly from a hindsight's 50-50 kind of way.
Hindsight is 20/20 in that it is clear. 50-50 would be a very blurry view of what has happened in the past, which actually might be accurate for you. Now that you mention it, that does kind of track that your hindsight would be 50-50.
I feel like
that makes a lot of sense.
I feel like I've just laughed this whole episode. I don't even care, guys. Hopefully maybe y'all are laughing too. but yes, you can find us on YouTube. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, which I love. So, okay. With that, I think that's a wrap, Mr. Houghton.
That's all that we had to say. We're only in Seattle a couple days. We loved it there. Wish we'd have stayed longer, but to move on to Olympic National Park.
Yeah. All right, guys. Life is short.
Wonder well.